The sixth order of the day is a motion on need to patronize gold mining as one of the major earners of revenue to the nation. Standing the Honorable Oghene Egoh, Honorable Oghene is invited to put the motion.
My name is Honorable Oghene Egoh. I represent the very good people of Amuodrofi Federal Constituency, Lagos. Mr. Speaker, I'm a Lagosian. The need to prioritize gold mining as one of the major earners of revenue to the nation recalls that on the 7th of April 2019, the federal government banned all mining activities in Zamfara State and directed all foreigners operating in the mining fields to leave within 48 hours, threatening to revoke the license of any recalcitrant mining operator. Aware that Nigeria has about 21.40 tons of gold deposits, and therefore there's need for many large-scale mining companies, gold mining policies, state-of-the-art geological survey, including map production and maintenance of up-to-date geological records, health and safety inspections and maintenance records, legal records of licenses and legal examination of new applications, among others. Also recalls that a publication in this day newspaper that Nigeria loses about $9 million annually to illegal mining every year, and that many lives are also lost as a result of mining activities that ignore environmental protection policies. Also aware of the official records that mining in Nigeria accounts for a mere 0.3% of Nigeria's gross domestic product, meaning that the federal government may not have official records of the amount of mineral deposits in Nigeria, which, if ascertained, could make the mineral sector one of the largest contributors to government's revenue through the payment of royalties, employees' income, taxes, and corporate taxes. Concerns that though gold is found in large quantity in Zamfara State, illegal miners cut away billions of dollars worth of gold yearly, leaving the state with poor state of education and inadequate healthcare.
Solomon Marine, Honorable Marine, can we listen to our colleague in silence? Amos.
Acknowledges that if the resources from gold are effectively managed by the government, 30% derivation from gold earning can go a long way in boosting the economy of Zamfara State, while the remaining can go into the federation account.
Honorable Darlington.
Okay. Desirous of the need for the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, whose responsibility are to promote full-scale gold mining in Nigeria, facilitate interaction between mining employers, examine mining policy issues, create partnership with key stakeholders, and to come out with modernized and conducive policies, legislative and functional environment to facilitate reinvestment in gold mining. Resolved to urge the Federal Ministry of Mines and Steel Development to provide geological records of gold deposits in Nigeria and mandate the Committee on Solid Mineral to development to ensure compliance. I so move, Mr. Speaker. Today, majority of our foreign exchange earnings come from oil, whereas so much money is being made from gold. If you look at foreign journals that talk about gold, they will tell you so much gold is coming from Nigeria. It runs into billions of naira. And this newspaper came up with the statistics. But you cannot see anywhere that gold revenue is paid into the federation account. Zamfara and some other states around them are major gold producers. They don't have any reason to be poor, because if they collect 30% derivation, it will go a long way to boost the economy of the state, the education, healthcare, and other things of the state. But all this revenue is being carted away. And that's why we are moving this motion, so that a body can be set up like NNPC, as NNPC is to oil. Let them set up a body like that to harness all resources, all revenue coming from gold, to ensure that all license fees are paid to them, any revenue coming is paid there, and this money should be paid into the federation account, so that when it's paid into the federation account, the federal government can have enough money to fund their budget. Right now, there's so much money from gold, which government can use to fund their budget, but we are not having it. A country like South Africa, is gold they use in developing the economy. Ghana is another example. As we speak to you, much of the foreign exchange earnings of Ghana is still coming from gold. The same thing with South Africa. I don't know why we cannot do this in Nigeria where there's so much gold. Is it that we are so dependent? Oil revenue have blinded our eyes so much that we don't know that we need other sources of revenue. Look at the roads in Nigeria. All roads are bad because you don't have enough money to repair the roads. And yet, gold money is here, which the country needs to exploit. And that is why I'm calling on my colleagues to especially support this motion, because if it's supported, revenue from gold can help the federal government to fund their budget, and it will be for the good of everybody. And the state Zamfara can be getting 30% reservation, so that they can also be a state that can take care of their people, a state where they can have enough revenue to handle education, handle healthcare, and a host of other things. This is why we are moving the motion, because a situation where individuals are putting all the billions from gold into their pocket, whereas the state is getting nothing, federal government is getting nothing, federal account is getting nothing, is not the best for us. And that is why we need, this house need to take this motion very seriously, so that a body that will harness the gold resources of Zamfara State and other states like that is set up, so that tomorrow we can say Zamfara is one of the richest states too. Indeed, they are one of the richest states. But all the revenue is being stolen away into private pocket. This cannot continue while this house exists. Mr. Speaker, I call on you and other people, other colleagues here, to please support this motion. Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, let me commend my senior colleague, or our senior colleague, Honorable Ima, for such a very wonderful and organized and national-oriented motion. Mr. Speaker, Nigeria is a monolithic economy. We rely solely on one source of income. And based on the research available, in the near future, petroleum will be...
Honorable Ahmed, are you sure we rely on only one source of income? No, I don't think so. Well, let's put the record straight. Thank you.
What I'm trying to say in a nutshell, wherever you rely more than 80% of your income generation is from one source, you are more or less operating a monolithic economy by having a single source of income. By diversifying, particularly in the areas of mining, my area of concern is the employment. Mr. Speaker, I kept on saying, and I will keep on saying, if you can rely on government alone to give you jobs, we may be wasting our time. Look at advanced countries of the world. People have been relying on themselves and to some extent to private sectors by inviting or stimulating or motivating investors to come and invest so that they can create jobs for our teeming unemployed youth, which are more or less creating problems every day in, day out in the country. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the nature of Nigerian economy, Mr. President emphasized that we should go back to farm. People are not willing to go back to farm. So we shouldn't emphasize on farming only. We should diversify to other sectors of the economy, such as mining, tourism, to mention but a few. So this motion is up.
Honorable Chris Emeka Azubogu. Honorable Chris Emeka Azubogu.
This motion is appropriate.
You have breached our rules.
For the establishment of an agency just like NNPC to control the mining of gold, particularly in Nigeria. At the end of the day, he emphasized on the issue of 13% derivation. Anywhere you talk, people will be crying that 13% reservation has been given to oil-producing communities. You should initiate something that can generate revenue so that you can equally get the 13%. Look at Bauchi now, we have discovered gas. Maybe in the near future, they will join the group of people driving, taking the 13%
Honorable
reservation.
Akinjo, Honorable.
Nigeria has relied mainly on petroleum for the funding of its budget. And to diversify into gold mining would, solid minerals would go a long way. We need to start thinking of other sources of revenue for Nigeria. So I thank the mover of this motion, and I totally agree with this motion that it's time we diversify into other forms of generating revenue and developing the solid mineral sector.
I want to thank Hon Oghene for this very important motion. And it makes one have a rethink that in this country today, we know how funds or revenue for the governments are very difficult, considering the numerous projects and liabilities that government has to undertake. Now, if you look at the solid mineral sector, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleague, in the last dispensation, when Abubakar Buhari Bawa was the minister and Femi Fayemi were the minister of solid minerals, they brought up an issue where they wanted us to have we have the Solid Minerals Development Fund, which they want it to be on first order, and they wanted it to be increased by a certain percentage. I'm not sure if that was passed, but Mr. Speaker and honorable colleague, I think this is time we can look at that law, because what we need to do is to make sure that artisan miners have access to funds, because most of the problems they have is their inability to procure equipments that they will use. And if you look at the large-scale miners, the issue is accessibility to where all the solid minerals are deposited. Coupled with that is the insecurity we have in the country. So in as much as we want to diversify, I think certain things need to be put in place. And very importantly, like I said, is for us to pass this legislation that will increase the percentage of money that is available for the solid mineral fund, which will make funds available, like I said, to our artisan miners and also for the big scale miners. And that will be a very big incentive. We can look at that. And Mr. Speaker, I want to thank again. I think we should, it's not even about about gold alone. I think all the solid minerals, because when Nigeria is really endowed with a lot of solid minerals, which can really help the revenue base of our country. And that even brings to fore, I would have said, even instead of increasing the VAT, I think this is a sector that we can now look at and make sure that it will even augment what we are even supposed to have from the increment of VAT that we are thinking of at 7.5. I hardly support this bill, this motion, and I want the Committee on Solid Minerals to look at that section, or to be sure if we have passed it or if Mr. President has ascended to it, and to make sure that it is implemented, because it is a different thing to pass a bill, and it's another thing to make sure that it is implemented, and we have the legislative compliance to be sure that the funds are available. The Solid Minerals Committee will take a very cursory look at how this Solid Minerals Development Fund is disbursed to make sure that it meets the needs of the solid mineral development.
First of all, Mr. Speaker, let me commend Hon Oghene, given that he's not even from Zamfara State, but because he's a true Nigerian, he decided to bring up this motion for the sake of increasing the revenue generation of Nigeria in one path, and of course, just like the oil-producing states, give Zamfara State an opportunity to earn more revenue through this process. And looking at also the budget, if this is harnessed, it will also assist in increasing the revenue generation of this country in such a way that we will not even need to borrow to part-fund the 10 trillion budget as proposed for 2020. So I believe that apart from even gold, there are other areas in solid mineral that we can generate revenue, like tantalite, barite. These are areas that we can harness effectively and ensure that we will little bit depart from oil and call it Nigeria without oil. That is what this motion is talking about, and I wholeheartedly support this motion, and also ask Minister of Solid Mineral that other communities, other states that have deposit of such natural resources, that they should be harnessed to ensure that we collectively bring them up and regulate them in such a way that revenue can be generated from that source. And it will help us in funding some of our budget provision in the 2020. So I wholeheartedly support him and, of course, commend him for bringing it up and call other Nigerians to emulate him in bringing motions like this that will impact the life of Nigerians, not only for a particular session.
Use of the potentials in the solid mineral subsector, there is a need for us to amend the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which is the grand norm of the land, to remove issues that deals with mining from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent legislative list, so that states can have jurisdiction with regard to solid minerals mining. Because as it is now, it is under the exclusive legislative list and is subjected to the vagaries and vicissitudes of bureaucratic bottleneck in the Federal Ministry of Solid Mineral Resources for miners to obtain licenses, and then all the taxes and then bureaucratic bottlenecks that potential miners are supposed to go through in obtaining these licenses, both at the federal and the state level. And again, we have been crying that states do not generate enough revenue with a view to running their own budget. And in order to further strengthen the fact that we are operating a federal system of government, which presupposes that the component units that constitute the federation are independent and coordinate, there is a need for us to amend the Constitution to bring mining to the concurrent legislative list so that states will have jurisdiction, not necessarily exclusive jurisdiction, but they should have jurisdiction with regard to mining, so that at the end of the day they can pay royalty or taxes to the federal government, so that it can be a source of revenue to various state governments. Because minerals resources are spread across the nooks and crannies of this country. Every state that you go in this country, we have one form of mineral resources that is untapped or the other. So apart from insulating it from bureaucratic bottlenecks and what have you, there is also the advantage of giving states additional revenue rather than always coming to the center cap in hand, begging for money to run their projects, thereby even compromising the whole essence of practicing a federal system of government that presupposes the states to be independent but coordinate with the center. So, having regard to that, I support this motion, and I urge my colleagues to support this motion.
Those in favor of the motion as amended say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.